The first one we have is Bertrand Russell, and his quote is, "I would never die for my beliefs because I might be wrong." This is a solid 8 here. It's good advice. It's something that you could hear your, I don't know, dad or grandfather saying, and you'd be, that's quite something. It doesn't really have a lot of oomph. It doesn't really have a lot of depth, but it's good, solid advice. A good quote that you could use in an essay of some sorts. Solid A. Okay, the next one we have is Søren Kierkegaard. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. Danish people. Life must be understood backward, but it must be lived forward. I think this is mid, honestly. His philosophy it's really interesting. He wrote a lot. He was contemporary to Nietzsche. But this quote, honestly, it's something that an 8th grader, a girl at the end of the 8th grade, might put in her yearbook. You know, it's true. It sounds a bit too romantic and quirky for my taste, but there's nothing wrong with it. You know, solid B mid. Okay, the next one we have is René Descartes with his famous "I think, therefore I am." Solid trash. This is awful. Why? Let me explain. "I think, therefore I am" is not a natural conclusion. So he says, I'm doubting everything, and even if I'm doubting everything, I must think, therefore I must exist. No, because something greater than you could be imagining you. I don't know about you, but when I imagine a person, that person has less mental capacity than me. So if something greater is imagining you, a human, he has a mental capacity that we can simply not comprehend. He could be very well imagining all of humanity, and he exists, but we don't, because we're just a product of his imagination. So I think, therefore, something exists would be a much more natural conclusion. And not only that, but even Nietzsche confronts this quote. Listen to this. This is from Beyond Good and Evil. "Enough. This, I think, presupposes that I compare my in present order to determine if others no disrespect. But why do you want the truth at all?" So Nietzsche basically asks, what's thinking, and how do you know that you think? How do you know what thinking is? How do you know what you are? Yeah, "I think, therefore I am" is something that I believe is refutable, and it's trash. Next we have Epictetus, who said, "Freedom is secured not by the fulfilling of one's desires, but by the removal of desire." And this is the first one I'm going to give an S tier. This is based, because this is more than just a quote that you say, that might be true. This is something that might actually change how you see life. This is a quote that has a lot of value, and thinking about it might actually change how you think about other things. Of course, if I remove desire, I will be freer, because I won't be at the mercy of what I want. Okay, the next one we have is someone who you might not have heard of, Zhuangzi, Master Zhuang, and he said, "A frog in a well cannot conceive of the ocean." Another S tier. Of course it's an S tier. It's poetic and holds a lot of value of truth about life. If you're limited in what you think, in what you see, you can't even comprehend, you can't even imagine what true reality is, because you only experience it through the well, through a very limited and narrow space. We are the frog in the well. Okay, next one is Sun Tzu, and he wrote The Art of War, which is not a philosophical text. 99% of it is about war. It's a military text. I know a lot of people say this is philosophy. It has that 1% maybe of philosophy, and the quote is coming from that 1%. Even the finest sword plunged into salt water will eventually rust. You could say this would be an A, this is a truth, and you might say, okay. You might hear your father or grandfather talking like that, and you'd say, sure, maybe roll your eyes a little. But I'm gonna put it at B because I don't think it holds that much value. We know that our circumstances affect us very much. The place you live, the people you surround yourself with, of course, they change how you behave. So I don't think this is as good of a quote as the others. Okay, the next one we have is Epicurus. He who is not satisfied with a little is satisfied with nothing. Based. This talks again about our desires. Epicurus was a very interesting man. He found a sort of academy, the garden. It was on the way to Plato's academy, and he had very interesting ideas about pleasure and about being happy. Namely, that happiness comes from tranquility, from not going to either extreme, not of extreme pleasure or extreme pain. They indulged in pleasures like eating and talking and staying with friends. And he said that a good life is one that's surrounded by friends and in tranquility. So this quote, he who is not satisfied with a little is satisfied with nothing, really shows that he wasn't talking about, in his philosophy, extreme hedonism, but actually being happy with what you have, which the quote itself does change the way you see the world, which is why it's based. Okay, next one we have is Protagoras, who said that man is the measure of all things. Again, an A tier quote. Why A tier and not S tier? Because if you think a little about it, you already knew that. You already knew that you are the one that judges things in your view, in your world. Basically, everyone sees the world slightly differently, and they use themselves as a judge, as something to compare. Protagoras just says that we all humans judge the world based on us. Yeah, that's true, but that doesn't really change much. Next one we have is Diogenes, the wild philosopher, let's say, who said that he is a citizen of the world, a citizen of the cosmos. Honestly, for me, this is S tier. He was asked which city he came from, and he said that he's a citizen of the cosmos. Basically saying that all people are equal, no matter their place of origin. He decided to give up his origin in order to live by his philosophy. He did indeed live by his words. He lived on the street, only owned a bowl, and was pretty wild in how he acted. One time, there are a lot of anecdotes. For example, one time he was caught masturbating in public, and when asked why, he said, "Oh, if only I could make my hunger go away by rubbing my belly." He is a great example of living by your own rules, and this quote shows it, which is why I'm giving it an S tier. Next, we have Lao Tzu, which said that a journey of 1,000 miles, well, 1,000 li, but 1,000 miles, begins with one step. This, I would have given it S tier, but this is a solid A tier. Again, it's something that you think a little about and it's true, but doesn't really change how you behave. It's a good quote to put at the end of, I don't know, your essay, to say to a friend at a bar, whatever. It won't change much, but it has some value, which is why I'm putting it in A tier. Next, we have one of the most famous philosophers, Aristotle, who said that he who is unable to live in society, or who has no need because he is sufficient for himself, must be either a beast or a god. He said that you, as a human, have to live in a city and obey the city's rules. So if you live outside of society, you are either a beast or a god. This one is a tough one, because if you look at it at face value, you can say this is a B or C, because there are a lot of people who live outside of society as hermits. But then you think about it, are those hermits beasts or gods? Well, they are closer to both than they are to humans in a way. So after giving it some thought, I think this quote goes into the A tier, because even though it's a little deeper than the other ones in the A tier, well, I don't know if it holds as true as the ones in the S tier. I don't know how true that is. But that quote hints at something that might be there and might be really interesting. Next, we have our last Eastern Chinese man, Confucius, who said, "I was complaining that I had no shoes, till I met a man who had no feet." This is basically saying that you compare yourself with better things and that you should be happy with what you have. Honestly, this is C tier. The intention is good, but the quote itself could have, could benefit from some work. I'm not dissing Confucius here. It's probably a problem of translation. It's probably an example that I don't really like, and we didn't really have anything in C tier. But with this one, yeah, I'm putting it in C. Next, we have Albert Camus, who said that there is but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Well, I like the intention, but this is another C, because there are a lot of serious philosophical problems. Not everything comes down to suicide. His answer to suicide was no, which is a very good answer, and the rest of his philosophy, honestly, I really enjoy. I've read some secondary sources and a few primary sources, but this quote, well, it's not true. We do have more serious philosophical problems than suicide. So I'm putting him in C, and I'm bumping Confucius into B. Okay, the mustachioed man himself, Nietzsche, said that God is dead. He remains dead. And we have killed him. S tier. Why? This is an overused quote, I'll give you that. But it holds true. And its meaning is that the moral values of religion can no longer be applied to how we live life, and we must create our own moral values. Yes, this is an S tier quote because it shows that man, you, whatever you are in control of your life, of your decisions, not some institutions with maybe outdated views. Okay, Bishop George Berkeley said that to be is to be perceived. Okay, he basically says that something doesn't really exist unless another thing notices it. The classic example of if a tree falls in a forest and no one can hear it, does it make a sound? The problem is, I don't really agree with this. Quantum physics might agree with this. I don't really know. I'm not a quantum physicist, nor do I have enough expertise in that area. But this is a C tier. I don't really agree with the truth value of this one. Not as much as I don't agree with René Descartes. And one reason that I hate that quote so much is because it's so circulated. But yeah, this is C tier. Next we have none other than Ludwig Wittgenstein. Yes, one of my favorite philosophers, who said, the limits of my language mean the limits of my world. S tier. As you can notice, we have a lot of S tier quotes. That's because philosophy is S tier in general. It's very based. But he basically says that we cannot conceive something that we cannot speak about. Language limits what we think about, what we can think about, what we can talk about, transmit. And this is very true. The limits of my world really are the limits of my language. Because I can't think of a square circle. It's something impossible. I can't imagine it. I cannot imagine something that I cannot put into words. And even though I can talk about a square circle, those words don't really have a meaning, because a circle is anything but square by definition. So it's not the limits of the words that I can use, it's the limits of the meaning of my words. That's a little clarification, but I do believe that this quote is S tier based. Okay, next, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who said that man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains. 8 year. 8 year, because I do believe this is true. I do believe we are born free, and the moment we are born, the world affects us. Yes, there might have existed a noble, a savage, and the social contract might be true. This quote is okay, but I don't think it really makes you think about life differently. Again, it's something that you hear, you go, oh well, yeah, that's true, and you move on. Okay, then goes Leibniz, who said that we live in the best of all possible worlds. This is a tough one. His philosophy, which I haven't read the primary sources, I've only read accounts and descriptions of his philosophy, it's pretty tough to understand. He is a positivist, from what I know, and he said that we live in the best of all possible worlds because that God. Beat here. He might be right, he might be wrong. It's an okay quote to lift you up a bit, but at the end of the day, I don't really know how to think about it. But I don't really know if it's, I don't really think, intuitively that it's either wrong or right. I just don't know. Next, Socrates, who had a pretty ugly nose. He said that the only thing I know is that I know nothing. A good quote, nothing life-changing. A lot of people know that they don't know everything on Earth. And if this is life-changing, you might have missed some stuff when you went to school. I think he was a bit too stubborn, if we talk about his life and his death especially. I do think personally that it was a bit of an ego move in his defense. He's not my favorite philosopher, but he does have some interesting dialogues related, told by Plato. So solid 8 here for this quote too. Next, I'm gonna put, I don't know why I put him twice, but yeah, he's twice in trash tier. We're in the cart for that quote. I think therefore I am. Next, we have the Buddha, who said that however many words you read, however many you speak, what good will they do if you do not act upon them? This is solid advice, and I'm split between putting it in S and A. Ultimately, I think I'm gonna put it in A. The intention is very good, but it doesn't really have the poetic quality that all the quotes in S tier have. It's, the best one in A tier, almost S, but maybe the phrasing could have been a little better. Again, this is probably a problem of translation. Okay, next we have Heraclitus, who said that you cannot step into the same river twice. You probably guessed it, this is an S tier quote. It talks about time, about change, about how we change throughout time. It's a quote that you can think about. It's a quote that has some poetic quality. S tier. And lastly, this is Blaise Pascal, who said that all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. I'm split between A and B because a lot of humanity's problems stem from disease and war and death. But a lot of humanity, also a big part of humanity's problems, maybe even more, stem from him not being able to sit in a room alone. So I think I'm gonna put it in. Yeah, it's an 8 tier quote. Yeah, this is a good quote. So this was the tier list. If you have anything else, like a philosopher tier list or other quotes that you want me to cover, comments. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.